And our first question is from Tarek Goktas. He says, could you educate myself and maybe some listeners on how exactly transfers work, especially in Real Madrid? Who is the first point of contact? Does the coach have much of a say? Does Florentino make the final call? Feel free to speak on as much detail as you want. Also, who are the current Real Madrid scouts and how much do we know about them? Thanks, guys. As a real estate agent who's frequently driving, my day gets so much better when there's a new podcast. Appreciate the work. Tarek from Sydney, Australia. Thank you, Tarek. Appreciate it. All right, Lucas, how do you want to answer this?
The main guy taking care of transfers is always Real Madrid CEO Jose Angel Sanchez. Obviously, you have to assume that he's in close contact with Chief of Scout Yuni Calafat, who has been in that role for the last 4 or 5 years. He gained importance within the club's hierarchy over the last decade or so. He started working as a regular scout and then put himself higher in the ranks due to some very good work and notable work like Fede Valverde, Odegaard, and I'm not sure if Casemiro was one of his discoverings too. I think he was. Casemiro also there. Obviously, some other misses like Lucas Silva were a part of his work, but he's had a pretty great track record. So those two guys are the ones in terms of the ones to watch in terms of transfers. Yuni Calafat obviously recommends the players and tells the CEO Jose Angel Sanchez that Real Madrid should probably potentially take a look at those players, and then the one conducting and driving the negotiations is always Jose Angel Sanchez with the green light of Florentino Perez. This is for regular transfers. Obviously, when Mbappe, Saga, Hazard maybe back in the day, Bale back in the day, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo, Kaká, those big ones, you have to assume that President Florentino Perez is always pays a little bit more attention to those negotiations and all that. When the deal it's a little bit tricky, as we saw, for example, in the Bale transfer saga, he probably had to get his hands dirty a little bit, quote unquote, with by talking to Tottenham President Daniel Levy also. So, but Yuni Calafat and CEO Jose Angel Sanchez are the ones who are high in the ranks taking care of the regular transfers.
I think you answered it perfectly. I don't think there's anything for me to add, to be quite honest. You mentioned some of those outliers that the board will take care of, that, the scouting, obviously the scouts have nothing to do with. Like, for example, like a scout is not going to ever tell Florentino Perez to go sign David Beckham and sell Makaleli, right? Those are completely different decisions that are done at the board level for various reasons that no coach will have a power on, not then anyway. And it really depend on who the coach is, Solari or, I don't know, any of those guys we had back in the day, like the 8 coaches in 2 years, like Juan de Ramos and all those guys. None of those guys are going to have power. Some coaches are going to have more of an input, like Jose Mourinho, for example. They'll have more power. There's going to be exceptions to the rule. Ancelotti has always been the guy who will make it work with whatever he's given. So it's kind of different from era to era, but the principles remain the same. Even David Beckham, Jose Angel Sanchez is the one who's going to Manchester and negotiating with them and all that stuff. It's not Florentino Perez. And you mentioned everything about the scouting network. Yeah, Casemiro was a Calafat discovery as well. And the thing with scouts too, I guess the only thing I'll add, Lucas, to what you maybe didn't say was scouts are often hidden in terms of we sometimes don't know who the scouts are. They go under a low profile. Some of our friends who are even on Twitter, they work for certain clubs, but they're not allowed to say which club they work for. But then others are very public. So there's the 4 that I believe are registered officially with Real Madrid: Juni Calafat, Chucho Solana, Andres Pardo, and Santi Aragon, where Juni Calafat is the head of that whole thing, and the other ones are kind of apprentices that work under him.
The football and sporting direction in Real Madrid is kind of shared between Jose Angel Sanchez and Calafat. Real Madrid don't have anyone taking care of that particular role. but it's Jose Angel Sanchez doing the negotiations. On one side, I was going to say that he knows nothing about football is obviously not true, but he knows nothing about Vinicius and Rodrigo or Reinier in Brazilian football back in the day. Jose Angel Sanchez doesn't watch those games, and it's Yuni Calafat and obviously the other guys working below him, the ones doing that hard work. But it's between Yuni Calafat, who discovers the players, recommends players, and then Jose Angel Sanchez doing the negotiations. With also, I have to assume that, unless this is a big transfer like Mbappe, like I could put Tchouaméni in this list also. You have to assume that they talk to Ancelotti and to whoever the coach is about the whole situation, right? You have to assume that at least, hey, how would you see if we added another winger to the squad? Would you be fine with it, or are you fine with keeping the squad you have and all that? So you have to assume that the coach is at least updated in terms of the situations and whether or not Real Madrid are going to make signings or whether or not they're going to stay put.
You assume. And sometimes, shockingly enough, that is not the case. And I'm not even talking about Real Madrid, but like if you go across European leagues, different teams, it's often the case that the coach is not consulted at all. I remember, I think most famously, when Arsenal signed Lucas Perez. Can't remember which Arsenal manager was in charge at that time. But he literally publicly said...
Had to be Wenger.
I think it was Wenger. He actually came out and said that I didn't know anything about this guy. I didn't ask for him, and he just showed up. He was signing, and he showed up to training. And so there are weird cases like that.
Yeah, and Wenger was the kind of manager role where he decides transfers and all that. So it was a bit strange in that particular case for sure.
If anyone deserves some kind of say, it's literally Arsene Wenger who is.
He controlled everything. Yeah.